Hey, what's up, America? I'm America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan, and this is HubSpot expert and boat captain, Tom Prendergast. And this is 190 West Presents Just the Tip with Captain Tom. This is a show where we give you just the tips you need to get the most out of HubSpot. And by get the most out of HubSpot, I mean make more money with HubSpot. Today's tip has to do with static lists. Captain Tom, what is a static list?
A static list. Well, you got to look at the two types of lists, right? You got a static list and you got an active list, right? The active lists are a little more fun. Statics tend not to be as fun. More of a snapshot in time.
What did so you equated a static list to what? You remember?
Oh, the redheaded stepchild of lists. There's no doubt. Everyone wants to bypass it and forget about it, but yeah.
This got me thinking, and this has nothing to do with a tip, but this is the only value add for me on this. So, we live in a cancel culture. It's very woke. It's very PC. Everyone's offended by everything. But I always thought there was just one demographic that we could all openly hate and everyone was fine with, because you could never say, and I agree with this, you could never say something like, I would never date an Asian person, or I would never marry a black person, or I would never get romantically involved with a Jew. That would be awful. And I agree. But you can say, specifically if you're a woman, I would never date a short guy. Everybody goes, yes, absolutely. I get it. They are undateable. So I thought short men were the only thing that everyone could talk, trash about and be okay with it. But then you reminded me of redheaded stepchildren, which is another thing. We are making fun of ginger orphans to the point where I search redheaded stepchild in Shutterstock, and look at this adorable child.
That's
and everyone's he's unlovable. Look at him. He doesn't have parents, or somebody took him in, but they didn't want to. But static lists are not, there's some value there, right? Can you give us the value of the static list?
There's probably more values in this, right? So we don't have a lot of time. This is maybe the 101. So certainly, people watching this, make comments, let us know how else you would use static lists, or maybe debunk my ideas on static lists. I don't know, whatever you want to do. But static lists are extremely helpful for a couple, I think, big reasons or big ways. One is, if you go to an event, right, a trade show, and you get a list of contacts. Now, normally, if you do an online event, right, a webinar, whatever, someone's filling out a form. That form is then attached to an active list, so it's actively listening, bringing in contacts into that, adding them to a campaign, because you can do that through the form and the page and all that. But with a trade show that you're given a list, there's nothing, they're not filling anything out. So you got to first somehow connect those contacts to that trade show campaign. And the only way to do that really effectively, and I think, is through a static list. So when you set up a campaign, right? So if I go into campaigns here, as everybody knows, HubSpot bases their campaigns on assets, right? You add assets to the various campaigns, and that's how you get your attribution to your different contacts and all of that. When you go to add asset, the only list that comes up and the ability to actually pull in contacts that you have uploaded and that is through a static list right here. You don't see active lists on this at all, right? There's no active list here because that's always moving. A static list is a snapshot in time. So regardless what those contacts do after getting added to that static list or attached to this campaign, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be attributed here because you told HubSpot, hey, these contacts are a part of this list, a part of this campaign, keep them there. So that's one, I think, big thing that, it may not be overlooked, maybe forgotten about, or people may think of, I don't know, doing something else and maybe doing an email campaign, trying to get them attached to the campaigns that way, right, through some action after the trade show. But easiest way, put them in a static list and then build your other assets from there.
So far, not a redheaded stepchild.
No, actually, it's the child. Right?
It's the biological child.
You don't even see active in here, right? Yeah, right. I know. And it's still forgotten about in some cases. The other thing that I think is really, really nice with a static list is when you look at setting up a workflow, right? So like this is just an example here, right? But if you set up a workflow, okay, and you set up a workflow using, well, this is a deal workflow, so that's not really going to help. Let's just create a quick workflow from scratch, contact base, right? Okay, so you got your trigger. Yeah, so you can set your trigger up with either or, right? A static or an active list. The thing that I have seen, and I've done it myself, and I'm sure others that may be watching this at some point have done it as well, is you put together a workflow, you add an active list, you feel all really good about it. Boom, you're getting these emails, you're getting things started, keep the thing running, but you forget, oh, you know what? That active list is always listening. New contacts are getting entered in. You may not want new contacts entered in. And sure, you can do some enrollment, re-enrollment type things that kind of block that. But a real safe way to do it, if you just want to have this core set of contacts that get added to this workflow, get these email, is set up a static list, do that as the trigger. And that way there, new ones are not being entered in unless you actually manually add them. So if you're doing that and then you're also getting emails in your same situation as static list, well, that's kind of your own fault. Because you should be knowing that. But that, I think, is a really good way to make sure that when you start off with a list, that they're staying in the workflow, but they're not automatically adding new contacts that you may or may not want to have.
Beautiful. Maybe not as sexy, but just as useful.
Right. And it's always sitting there too. So these static lists, if you do reports on the static list, right? The active, because they're always moving, right? Contacts are entering into the list, they're coming out of the list, right? Depending upon how you have these things set up. With the static, once they're in there, they're in there. So, they're always going to be there regardless of whatever action. So you can always pull back. You can say, okay, this contact, because it's part of this list, you can pull it for, communication, follow up, whatever the case may be. And you don't have to worry about maybe some contacts have fallen off because of whatever, or new one's been added, it may not be added, right? You know exactly what you've got. You can start communicating to them. Or there's no issues. And with the static list, you can set it up the same way that you can an active list, right? So you can start with, if I go to create list here, right, and I go to static list, I just name this test. Oh, I did an active list. See that? It's so quick to do active lists. Everyone wants to do active lists. That's again, it's more fun. Okay, by doing a static list, I can do the same filtering that I would on an active list. So I can have just as much fun in the beginning. Once I hit save, that's it. It's a snapshot. Done.
Well, listen, I'm personally sold on static lists. I mean, listen, I understand the appeal of an active list, but sometimes you go to a trade show, that is a static list, right? What are you going to do? Just as good. Little different, just as good.
And I don't have a whole lot of time. So, I mean, there's other things we probably could use that static list for. And I'm sure other people have used them in other ways. But at least for me, I see it very often. People just overlook it. And they just want to go to the more fun list, being the active list.
I'm sure there's a million other things they could do. What they should do is go to 190west.com, maybe get a consultation from the HubSpot expert and boat captain, Captain Tom Pendergast. Don't you think?
Yeah. And I can talk about, hey, is an active or a static list best for you?
Because we know, because you're an expert. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tune in next week for another tip. You're going to love it. Until next time, I'm America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan. And you are?
Tom Prendergast, boat captain and HubSpot expert.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next week.